This is Short Hammer. It is the 29th of November 2020, and this is Trading Zones. So we're looking at the MES, and what we liked about last week is that we definitely had a buy up, even though it was a weird week, and the market was closed and the volume was a little bit funky. What I liked about last week, or what I do like about last week, is that the Bulls gave us a nice little push and a pop. So going into December, it should actually really be interesting because we're going to have, from what they're saying, we had an amazing Black Friday with people shopping online. So we'll see how that drives the market along with all the political news that's swirling right now. So if you look at the MES, um, we want to see if the 3610s do hold and if we continue to get it squeezed up through the 3667s. If we do, watch out. If you look at just all the elections, usually once we have the leadership solidified, so there's a little bit of indecision around elections, but afterwards, when things kind of settle down, the market does tend to go up. So we'll see if that pattern repeats again. So what I'm watching for is that we stay above 3610, we see a break of 3667, and we potentially get a pop here. If we do not, if we go back to the 3610 area and we get below that, then I will be looking, if we're bearish below this area, looking for a dip to the 3587-ish area. So we'll see if that happens. But the levels we're going to watch are 3610, 3587, potentially 3565 if we see a strong pullback. But what we should be seeing is more rotational trading, where people are rotating out of specific tickers and buying up tickers that have sort of sold over the last few months, and just rotating into different sectors. That's usually what we'll see. It's the end of the year. We'll see how it plays out, but just don't how do I put this? Don't have a bias, right? Let the chart tell you which direction to go. Don't guess which way we're going. The chart will tell you. Just wait for the pullbacks into different levels. And someone asked me why I don't have volatility and other things on my chart, because I think that all of us have different triggers or cues that we look for our entries. And I just like to show you the levels, right? And whether you're using pivots, or if you're using EMAs, if you're using bands, if you're using just stochastic, whatever you're using that sort of gives you your edge, whatever that is for you, that's what you wait for to get in and play your trades, because then you'll know where you want to get out, right? So I just show you these levels that I like. And based on that, if that helps you get better entries or better setups or get a better view of the market, then it's a win-win all the way around. Russell, gone. I mean, if you take a peek over at the financials, Goldman Sachs, like, it's just jamming. So I think there was definite, um, I'll say, I wouldn't say it's joy as much as it's just getting someone in with, I think Biden announced that he would be bringing in Janet Yellen, and bringing in someone like that. She's well known. People know what to expect from her. She's usually pretty dovish. So the market just wants more certainty. That's what the market does not care about the direction as much as it cares about certainty. The more certainty you give the market, the better the market is, the less volatility. So we'll see. But we need to get back through these 1863s and see if we pop and we run. So we'll see how this plays out. But the rest has just been bullish. Once we got above this, these upper wicks down here around 1652 and crash through 1662, we've been off to the races. Look how bullish this looks. That's a lot of those small cap tickers that are running. Peek over here at Amazon, and Amazon, as always, technically sound. So what you want to see here on Amazon, we did get a dip around the 3068s. We bought up through that. We are through the 3193s, right around this area here. If you're bullish, you want this 3193s to hold, and you want a break of this 3220-ish area, and you want to see a squeeze through the 3268s. So if I'm looking at the pattern that I'm seeing here on Amazon, right, and this is it's kind of going sideways here, and I've kind of mentioned that even though we see these little short waves, Amazon is a contraction expansion ticker where it'll contract for a little bit and then give you massive expansion. We just had one of the largest Black Fridays, or it's going to be Cyber Monday, just one of the largest holiday sales periods ever, right? And so there should be a reaction here. So we'll see if we get a spike and a run back to these highs, because I like to look at the previous areas. 3268s, we pop that. Potentially we see 3344, 3370, 3386. Maybe we go higher than that. But we have to first get through this 3220. Maybe we'll gap above that and we'll get a nice little run here. But if we don't and we dip here, then I'll be keeping my eye open and seeing if we get through the 3142. And if we dip back to the 3068, 3068 gives way, then I'm watching out for the 3020s. If that gives way, then the 2950s. I do think there is a 2900 test that will be upcoming, but I'm not sure if it'll be this year. It may be in the new year, and I'll be waiting for that setup. I'm not calling anything like, oh, the market's going down, the market's going to crash, or anything like that in any capacity. But I do feel we should get a test back down here somewhere, but we'll see how that shakes out. But what I'm watching for going into next week is, can we stay bullish, and do we get a squeeze and a pop above these 3220s through the 3268s? And if we get a run to the 3340s, that would be beautiful. We'll see how that plays out, but that's what I'm watching for on Amazon. If we dip back below the 3193s and we're bearish, then I'm going to watch to see if we can dip into the 3142 area. And then if we get below that, do we have room down to the 3068? So for me, I usually watch levels in both directions, because you a lot of times you're not exactly sure where something is going to go. But what I do is I use my other tools and tricks during my intraday, whether it's a swing setup or if it's an intraday play. I use those to figure out my exact specific entries. But what these lines give me are areas that I look for supply or demand, to be able to play off those areas to say, hey, off this area, I feel comfortable going long with a stop, knowing that if it gets above or it gets below a specific level, then to me, I feel the sentiment has changed on the ticker. So the way that I'm playing it, whether bullish or bearish, changes, right? So like if we don't stay bullish above this 3193 and we dip below this, I'm going to feel that there's a slight sentiment change. Does that mean the market's selling off or anything like that? No. What I'm going to be watching for is a short setup off of this level to see if we can get a dip, right, down to the 3140s. Now, if we open up gap down, I'm not going to be bearish, but for me, I watch where the market is and where the sentiment of the market is, where the S&P 100 is, sort of where the tick is. I watch all those things to be able to gauge at these levels, what do I think the sentiment is? And based on that sentiment, I'll look for a setup to try to follow the wave, whether I think we're going to retrace or whether I think we're going to go higher. I try to gauge sentiment and I try to figure out the wave, spot a pattern, and I just follow that pattern. Looking at Netflix. Now, if you remember our previous video, we liked the way that that Netflix closed, and we thought that there was a potential that we could get a nice pop. But what we were waiting for going into the week was for us to be bullish above the 490 area. Never got that. Instead, we got a pullback. And this provided a pretty good dip buy opportunity, but I did not dip buy. I did scalp this throughout the week, but I didn't buy for a swing, like, 2-3 week swing here or 30-day swing. I didn't do that at all. And I'm waiting for a pop over the 490 and seeing if we can get bullish through this 493, 494-ish area. And if we do, I want to see us sort of be bullish above this for a squeeze into the 504, 507 area, potentially higher. That's what I'm watching on Netflix. Now, if Netflix stalls out here again, if we get like a spike into this, see these upper wicks here, we get like a spike into this area and then we sell back down, then I'll probably looking to fade Netflix if we're back below that 490.41 area. So if we're back below this, I'll probably looking to fade this down to the 485s potentially. So we'll see if this pattern just turns out to be a more of a sideways pattern, and we're channeling between the 475-ish, I think we're talking about the 460s. But these down here it's 472 it looks like, but anywhere in this area, we get into the mid to lower 470s. Just look to see if when we get below 475, we're looking to be to long this. And as we approach the 485 or higher area, we look to get out. So I'll see if there's a play there coming up. But we've made these types of plays before. I've mentioned in previous videos. Watch this area. So we want to see if can we get above the 493, 94-ish, and can we have bullish candlestick structure above that for a squeeze? If not, if we reject, get back below the 490 area, then I'll be looking at the 485s to fade into, see if I can get nice little scalp plays down into that on pullbacks below that. If they pop us over and under this line, then I'll be waiting to see which direction the market decides to take us. NVIDIA, interesting. We are below the 531 line here. This to me is just more sideways action. I think the market is sort of waiting on a strong decision to give us a move on just quite a few tickers. And also I think that quite a few tickers have been going sort of like meandering between levels without really giving us a strong move in any specific direction, because people have been rotating out of some of these tickers that they've been sort of hammering, not meaning like hammering shorting, but like hammering meaning they've just been hitting these things all year long, and they've rotated into small caps. Previous video, and so the rotation is sort of a ebb and flow where they've rotated out of these things, they wait for it to pull back to a certain level, or they wait for the catalyst that they like, and they ride the next wave. So we'll see on NVIDIA if we get a bullish movement above the 531s, but I really have not been that heavy into NVIDIA. I just feel like when I want to see this, and when I don't see that, I kind of shy away from a ticker. Yes, you can play intraday and get nice little movements between levels, but it'd be great if we see a little bit of bullish action above this 531 area and a squeeze up into this wave around the 539s to the 540s. That would be okay, right? That would be nice. If we don't get that, if we stay bearish below this, then we know that we have room down here. Look at these wicks into the 523s. And if we dip lower into the 5 teens, like the 514s, 515s, maybe a little bit, just all through this area here on NVIDIA. But we'll see how that shakes out. I want to see how the week opens up on some of these tickers before I really begin to position myself on. That's on most of them. Now looking at Microsoft, we did get a dip down near the 208s, and that's a beautiful thing, but we bought back up. For Microsoft, I would like to see us above the 217s. If you look back, all this area here, look at these upper wicks. Look at this area, this indecision, right? Before we had these long waves, this indecision before this dip. So we're grinding back up into this area of congestion. I want to see if we get over the 217.70s and if we can get bullish above that for squeezing into the 221.75s. Not sure if they're going to give that to us this year, but I'm watching to see if we get a little bit more expansion, which is kind of doing now. If you look at this move from the 208s up, it's kind of a little bit of an expansion, but I want a bigger expansion like what we're seeing, what we see here from the 202s all the way up into the 220s, like a 15 to 20 point move is what I want to see on Microsoft in one direction. I don't care what that direction is. If it's up, great. If it's down, great. I just want a great entry to ride that wave. So I'm watching Microsoft to see if what we're getting out of this area is another buyback up and a pushback into the 217-ish area and a pop above. If we get back into the 217s and we begin to sort of stall and go sideways, I'll probably look for a fade to get about a point or two off of this dipping back through the 215s. So we'll see how that works out. I'll be keeping an eye on that to see if we get a good setup there. But a pop into the 217.70s, if we can get a hold above and a squeeze, I'd love a run into the 221s, which would give us a slight change of this sort of sidewaysy choppy pattern that we're seeing that's meandering. So we'll see how that shakes out on Microsoft. Intel, love this. So we were riding along the 45.40s. We popped above the 47.20s. Now, these upper wicks are not reassuring, but we're still holding the bullish pattern that we see setting up here. And we might get a squeezing around up in the 48.90s into the 49.16s right through here. So that would be interesting. That would be nice to see. But do like that we regained this area, the 47.20s on Intel. I'll be watching this for a play headed into next week because if we dip back below the 47.20s, then I know we probably have within here a good 40 to 50 cent drop, right? So we'll see how that shakes out. And maybe we sort of dip back to the 45.40s, but I want to see if we get strength through the 47.20s and then squeeze into the 49.16s. If you have fundamental news on this and I like to give you the technicals, but if you have fundamental news on this where you think that it's going in a particular direction, these levels are great to play off of because usually you get that fundamental news at technical levels, right? Where people naturally either want to buy or want to sell. And when you get that fundamental news, it sort of adds what's the word? Fuel to the fire. You just get that catalyst and you get that drive. So we'll see if we get a move up into the 49s on Intel, and I'll be keeping an eye on this to see how this shakes out. But a pullback would not be bad. And below the 47.20s, I may be looking for a 40, 50 cent drop in here. So we'll see if that happens or doesn't happen. But Intel is going to be on the radar this upcoming week. CMG. Now, if you're taking a peek at this, I drew this line here. I want to see if we can get above this 13.12.70s, basically above 13.13s. And can we get bullish candle structure, meaning candles closing above that for a squeeze near that 13.48 area and potentially higher? We'll see how this works out. I like that we saw buying above the 12.39s that they bought us up. That we pulled back is fine. Bought back up again. We have a higher low wave here. If we could run through this top around this 13.13s, that would be great, right? And that would give us a potential to hit those 13.48 areas of 13.40s right up in here, 13.48, maybe a push above. So we'll see how this sort of pattern works itself out. But I would love for this to make a higher high wave here. That would be for me a beautiful thing. So we'll see how that shakes. If we don't get that and we get sort of a bearish movement down, I will be careful on any entry. Like if we can't hold above these 1313s and we're weak here, we just get upper wicks, then I'll probably get a nice little fade action back to the downside, right? And see if we don't hold this bottom this time. So we'll see how that works. But there are two things you have to watch. If we push back up through the 1313s, but we don't hold and we get a pullback, then look for another higher low wave to see if we're going to get a bull run through the 1348 area, 1340ish run through here. That could be interesting on CMG. But again, if you want to look at the different levels, below the 1239s, we have the 1187s. But right here above these 1270s, we like that. We like that we're seeing a little bit of bullish advancement above that. So we'll see if that continues. But CMG is definitely interesting. Next up is McDonald's. So McDonald's, what we want to see is we sort of flared up into the 221s, a little bit of chop, rejected that. We want to see if we hold these 216s. If we hold these 216s and this consolidation here, that'd be great. And we get a bounce off of that back through the 221s. That would also be great. So I'm gonna be watching to see what the buyers and sellers are telling us next week on McDonald's if we have a clear direction. So if this break here out of this little consolidation, if this break up is going to turn out to be we pull back here and then we sort of jam a bit through the 221s and squeeze into 223s, or if we pull back into the 216s and pull down to the 213s and just meander a bit and sort of go sideways and grind on McDonald's. So keeping an eye on that and seeing how that shakes out. Look at earnings, had a nice pop, but it sold right back off, right? And so just the reaction, even though we're sort of grinding up now, you want to see a break at the 221s and for us to be bullish through the 223s into the 226s. That's what you want to see, a run back up into this little paint here. Sort of this pop up, this flare. So if we don't get that and instead we get this grind up and then this grind down, this grind up and grind down, then you can sort of know what to expect at these different levels on McDonald's to see if you want to sort of get short and fade that down, or if you want to get long down here and see if we go long and sort of get a squeeze up through here. So this is a good, I'll say 6 to 7 point window in here that you can play if you use this 213 area down into the, looks like, you can almost go to the 209s, but I'll say roughly about the 212 area as a potential area to watch your intraday setups, whether whatever short-term intraday setups you're using, to see if the buyers are stepping in for like a push back up into the 215s. And it may go higher through the 216s, almost to the 217s. That's possible. But just look at this little area here. It's like a little box you could almost draw that you could play. And this is sort of back testing that little box on this dip. So we'll see if it holds and it gets a push up. But this is an interesting little pattern that you can probably get a few scalp plays off for a few bucks on the intraday. Peek at ZM. So if you remember with the ZM, what we were watching for coming into the week was would we be able to hold those 430s, and would we get a nice little pullback, and would we get a jam through into the 460s? So what they did instead, and I did play ZM this week, was they gave us a slight pullback, but we held, and the buyers stepped in and gave us a vicious squeeze to the upside. We broke this downtrend that we had on the 4-hour chart that we're holding for quite. So let's see, this is from the 19th of October, right? So we were downtrending a bit. We broke that. Now we're pushing up. So we're above the 460. Watch the 478.28. If we're bullish through that and strong through that, we might get a run to the 495s, potentially the 524s. Earnings is coming up. So you want to be careful with ZM. That volatility should be crazy. But this area is interesting, right? We'll see if we reject the 478s and get a sell back into the 460s. But this is definitely an interesting setup on ZM. Should be a lot of energy around it going into this week. But let's see if we can squeeze here. That would be beautiful. If we don't get bullish above this 478.28, if we don't gap above on the open or run through this and are strong, like strong through here, I might be looking for a 5 or 10 point short off of this area. We'll see how that sets up. But as of now, the way that I'm looking at this, you gotta look at what the chart shows you, what the chart gives you. What it's telling us right now is that we're bullish. We have to see if we're bullish through the 478s. If we're bullish through the 478s, then that does open up the 495s. So we'll see how that plays out on ZM. REGN. I do like this chart. These areas here, this little blue area was a previous channel that we did end up breaking through to the upside here, and then we're pulling back in. And so here it looks to me like this is a buy situation, right? I don't like that there were earnings, and from those earnings we just continue to make lower lows, right? As far as from the earnings on, we didn't make higher highs, we made lower lows. So it's like sort of low waves that we're seeing. It seems as if we may be losing the steam on that downward pressure here, right around the 505-ish area, which is the demand area for this little blue channel that I drew here. So we'll see if the buyers do step in. I am keeping an eye on this, and depending on where we open, I might be just taking a shot on REGN to see if we can get a run up into the 525s or higher through the 540s. So we'll see how this shakes out as far as the setup. I'm going to use my intraday setups for this and try to see if I can get a day long swing. So we'll see if we get a dip at the open or if we get a buy up at the open. But whichever direction that we go, if we break below the 505s, then for me, I'll just be watching to see, where do the buyers step in? Is it, the 480s? Is it the 470s? I'll just be watching to see when do the buyers step in if we break this 505. And I might look for a short position if we're below this with a stop on a break and hold above. So we'll see how this shakes out on REGN. I do know they just got news, I believe, from the FDA. If you remember what I was mentioning with CM and a few other these WFH work from home tickers, was that we had to be careful because there was vaccine news that came out on Regeneron, and you just don't know how the market will react to that. The initial reaction, it seems, from ZM at the time, when we opened up Monday, was for us to get a sell. So it was a little bit of sell action we pulled down. But as the week progressed, we started to see the buyer stepping in, and they took us back to the upside. So I'm going to be watching this. Not sure if it's going to be sort of a seesaw type of a play where there's a pullback on the WFH and then there's a run up on Regeneron, or if that vaccine news was just specific to that time, and this is sort of an island of its own, and we're either going to go up or go down just based on the specific people that trade this ticker. So I will be watching it and seeing if this downward pressure is kind of gone, and if we get a little bit of buy up here, I'll definitely be looking for a play on REGN. Goldman Sachs going insane. What you want to watch for is the last time we're up in this area, right? These two 230s, we had a run into the 249-ish area. So let's see, that may happen again. But also what happened last time is there were flare downs, right? So look for a hold of the upper 220s. That means 228s, 227s. Look for that to hold if we get pullbacks. And if that does hold, then look for the buyers to potentially step in to give us another test and another push up into the mid 230s, maybe higher. right? So this will be interesting on Goldman Sachs. And I will have an eye open for this to see if this does play out that way. But watching Goldman Sachs, we'll see if we get a pullback or if it continues to go. Either way, definitely a good ticker to watch. It's definitely has range, but you do have to be careful because the options chain can be funky sometimes as far as the spread, and also the repricing can be kind of funky too, but not as funky as CI, right? Because CI, man, those spreads on CI and those options are are crazy at times. You just sort of have to put your price in to get in and put your price in to get out, and just wait for it to get to you. But watching CI, we did see this dip, and this is probably on some of the comments that were made by the president on healthcare. And now we're seeing a buyback up, right? So what we want to watch to see is this, can we get above the 215s? I have alert set around the 212s, 213s. So that's an interesting area for me. That's a swing door area. If we're above, we're more bullish. If we're below, we're more bearish. As far as if we're below that area and we're showing weakness, I short. If we're above that area and we're showing strength, I get long and use that area roughly as a stop. So we'll see if we can get strength through the 215s and the potential squeeze into the 222s. If we do not, and we don't hold the 212s, 213-ish area, then I'll maybe looking for a pullback down to the 206s and potentially lower. But keeping an eye on CI, that's when it comes to CI, ANTM, or any of those types of healthcare tickers, I prefer to play CI. I definitely like their structure and some of the things that they do with prescriptions. So definitely like the structure of CI. Don't always like the movements. Don't always like the option prices, but I think it's a very interesting ticker. If you remember us mentioning Dollar Tree about the 97s, and what's funny is you had to sort of look at things sometimes and you had to laugh. What they did when we got to the 97s was, we had earnings, but they left no doubt as to how strong this thing is once we got there. Nice buy and pop. We'll see if we get back above the 111s. But I will be watching Dollar Tree for one of two things: either profit taking, or if people really believe that there is more upside here, more growth going forward into the first quarter, then maybe we see a push through the 115s. But either way, I will be watching DLTR, and I'm definitely going to put a few alerts at some of these price levels just to see how this plays out. It's a very interesting ticker. It's not that liquid, so just be careful on any plays that you make on this. Make sure that you have the direction right. Even worse when a ticker is spready as far as the option price, if you're right about the direction and it's begun movement in that specific direction, if you got in at a proper price, you'll be able to get out. Don't be greedy, but you'll be able to get out. So, watch how you price your exits once you're in. Tesla's insane. That's all I have to say. So, I am not playing Tesla, I think, this upcoming week, but Tesla is insane. I'll keep an eye on it. If it continues to squeeze, then, sky's the limit. I'll wait for a pullback or a little bit more sideways consolidation action before I would look for a play on this. But the chances of me playing this week with just the amount of other tickers that are on the table, it's actually pretty low. But if you get a setup that you cannot deny, that you just say, hey, this thing is such a great setup, I have to take it, I understand taking it. We're right around the 585 area. If we pop above that, we have, the room to the 616s. If we don't pop above that, but if we get a little bit of sell side, then we have to watch out for the 579s, 568s, 562s, and the 554s. We'll see if we roll here. So a slight pullback would not be a bad thing. And if the buyers did step in, I may look for a quick wave to ride it back up to the 580s. Um, liking the SPY, just looking bullish, but at the same time, I don't like that these candles aren't longer in this 363 area. So we'll see how this shakes. If we jam above and we squeeze through and pop and just begin to just buyers, we're seeing some long candles, then I might ride the wave up. But I want to see a clear break of all these upper wicks, and I want to see long, bullish, strong candles to the upside for me to get long. Other than that, I went for a pullback because at these prices, for me, I'd rather only scalp and take high probability plays where I have an edge. We'll see if we get a pullback through the 358s or the 351s. This is probably not going to be likely, at least in the front end of the week, unless there's just a news of a different sort to change the momentum and the catalyst. But I will be watching for any gap ups or gap downs on the SPY. But we're just still looking strong, still squeezing to the upside. If you like this video, please don't hesitate to tap the like button. And if you'd like to receive content like this and content from Elisa as she shows you how she utilizes her power of pivot script to find great intraday plays, pre-market and post-market, and also swing plays, please subscribe to our channel, Power of Pivots. Thank you so much for your time. Please remain safe, keep your family safe, and have a wonderful week of trading.